Hello, LifePoint. My name is Jeremy, and I'd like to thank you for joining me for day 5 of our Redemption Road devotional series. The final Thursday of Jesus' earthly ministry is jam-packed with many significant events, but for our time today, I want us to focus on Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. I'd like to read a few verses of Jesus' experience in the garden out of Mark 14:32-36 in the New Living Translation. They went to the olive grove called Gethsemane, and Jesus said, "Sit here while I go and pray." He took Peter, James, and John with him, and he became deeply troubled and distressed. He told them, "My soul is crushed with grief to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me." He went a little further and fell to the ground. He prayed that, if it were possible, the awful hour awaiting him might pass by. "Abba, Father," he cried out, "everything is possible for you. Please take this cup of suffering away from me, yet I want your will to be done and not mine." In this moment, Jesus finds himself in the most challenging time of his life. Judas is on his way to betray, Peter is about to disown, the disciples are soon to scatter, and most devastatingly of all, Jesus knows that he will soon be separated from God as he takes on our sin while being savagely crucified on the cross. It's tempting for us to think everything was easy for Jesus and all the other mighty men and women in the Bible. But if we adopt that mindset, we essentially give ourselves an excuse to not hold on to faith in the midst of trying times. Because let's be honest, wholeheartedly trusting God in difficult circumstances is very often a difficult thing to do. Here Jesus says, "My soul is crushed with grief to the point of death." That sure doesn't sound like it was easy to me. Jesus goes on to plead with God multiple times to find another way to save him from the trials he was about to undergo. Jesus knows everything is possible for God and asks God to deliver. While we will never experience anything remotely close to the full extent of the trials and suffering of Jesus, we all still face our fair share of trials and hardships. In John 16:33, Jesus tells us, "In this world you will have trouble." Troubles are not a matter of if, but when. But in that same verse, Jesus immediately follows with, "But take heart, I have overcome the world." Maybe you find yourself right now crushed with grief over circumstances you are facing with no relief or rescue in sight. Maybe your present circumstances aren't the issue, but you're crippled by anxiety and fear for what the future may hold. Maybe you find yourself spiritually or relationally stuck and just needing a breakthrough. When you find yourself in these types of situations, what is your response? We can respond in so many ways, but there is only one right response: to trust God and respond to the situation with faith. Jesus' prayer was, "I want your will to be done, not mine." And that should be our prayer as well. Trusting God through prayer needs to become our norm and not our last resort. Trials and suffering are never fun, yet that is when we find ourselves most desperate for God and often experience our biggest breakthroughs and the most growth. Though Jesus' circumstances did not change and God did not rescue him by providing a different plan, Jesus was at peace with what was to come after that moment. He didn't fight it, and he didn't defend himself. We have the same invitation to find peace even while still in the midst of hardship, even when God doesn't answer in the way we want or the way we think he should. Our battle may not be over, but the peace can still be ours. Jeremiah 29:11 says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future." This promise was given to the Israelites after their nation had been conquered and they were in exile in a foreign land. It would have been easy to dismiss this promise given how strongly it contradicted their present circumstances. But as we know, God's word is always right, and he fulfilled that promise to them and extends the same promise to us today in the midst of our circumstances. I'd like to leave you with a few questions to ask yourself today. Will I believe God, or will I believe my circumstances? Will I still trust God when my circumstances don't go my way? Where do I need to trust God today? Thank you for joining me today, and I pray your faith is strengthened in the midst of whatever circumstances you find yourself in. God bless.